So today I have Bridgette Morris on the show. And before you start listening, I just want to let everyone know that when I speak about my life and about my family, friends, friendships, I am doing it in a way so that people understand my perspective and where I'm coming from and my life lessons and how I've come to be where I am today emotionally and, spiritually.
Yeah, I think what you're trying to say is, so Lynette and we're talking about relationships in this, and we've been, before recording, we were talking about, how do we share our stories and at the same time be respectful and honoring of the people that are in our lives that, have helped, form parts of our stories.
Correct.
And so I think the one thing that, we want people to understand is that when we are talking about, some hurt that came from our childhood, that we understand that people that were in our childhood might not want that perspective to be being shared.
Yes.
However, I think we both feel called, so correct me if I'm wrong, that God's really leading us to be able to say, we're focusing on behavior and change, and that both of our hearts is that generational patterns would be being changed, and by not saying anything, we're not changing things.
If you don't acknowledge how we're going to change. And the number one reason that I was led to do this podcast was to tell our stories as women, to tell our truths, to tell our perspective, to tell our stories in a way that we don't feel like we're the only people dealing and going through these struggles.
Correct. And I think one of the highlights that y'all will hear from our talk today is how Lynette and I both take ownership of our shortcomings, our mistakes, and how we in our own relationships today are making those changes. And so the people in our life that haven't taken those changes, nothing would make me happier than to get that phone call and say, hey, I heard the podcast and I'm sorry. I see where I was an avoider. And how do we start to reconcile? Like I said, that's I think both of our hearts.
That's the whole point of this. It's not to make anyone look bad, to bash anyone. It's speaking from our perspective on things. And when God leads me to do things, I'm going to do it. And this is what's in my spirit and in my heart. And how am I going to get through, with this podcast and get through to people without sharing and showing them my life.
Right.
And things that I've experienced.
Yes.
So.
Well, yes. And thank you. And I love that, like I said, that you're giving this platform and just your courage. Just your courage to speak your truths and to hope for positive, compassionate, positive change.
Yes. And that's honestly what it's all about.
Yes.
So enjoy the show.
Yay.
I'm so happy you found Virago 24/7. If you love this podcast, please go to wherever you're listening and rate the show. 5 stars would be very much appreciated. I wouldn't mind a review as well. And also, don't forget to share this podcast with your friends. Today's show is sponsored by the Healing Life Institute, where they're passionate about your personal growth and healing. They offer support and guidance to help you discover your inner strength and move into a more authentic and vibrant way of living. Go to healinglifeinstitute.org and enter promo code Virago10 for 10% off services. Hi, I am your host, Leonette Talley, and you are listening to Virago 24/7. Virago is Latin for female warrior, and 24/7 is for all day, every day. Virago 24/7 is a weekly podcast that brings diverse women together to talk about life and our experiences in this world. We share our views on self-love, mental health, marriage, children, friendships, and really anything that needs to be talked about. Here, you will find everyday growth, everyday healing with everyday warriors. Just give me my space to move. This is my thoughts, what I want, and I want what I want. Hello, everyone, and I am here with Bridgette Morris.
Hey, how are you guys doing?
I love having Bridgette. I've gotten awesome feedback when you're on these shows. So if this is your first time listening to Brit, go back and listen to her because she has awesome advice. She's a therapist. She knows what she's talking about. So I'm so happy to have her on the show today.
Oh, well, thank you for having me, and I love what you're doing and just the platform that you're providing just to give, people understanding of, basic life skills, really. Mm-hmm. I wish that they taught, how to handle relationships in high school. They teach us how to, do addition. I'm like, well, I know what 1 + 1 is, but how do I deal with this difficult person in my life?
Yes.
It would be great to have this as a class.
So I love when Brit comes because she kind of gives me what she wants to talk about, which I love because I don't have to think about it. I'm just like, yeah, come on with whatever you want to talk about because I know it's going to be good. So what do you have for us today, Brit?
Yeah, today I felt like it would be really, a good thing to talk about how to handle difficult people.
Mm-hmm. I call them toxic. So she's really sweet, very therapist-like, where she, difficult. And I like to say toxic, horrible people. No, I'm kidding. They're not horrible. They're just toxic.
Well, and the reason why, and I understand, people will say, I get often asked, like, how do I know if the person that I'm with is a narcissist? Or how do I know if the person that I'm with is toxic? Mm-hmm. So why I like to use the word difficult is every person can be difficult. It's a behavior choice. So it's how do I show up during conflict? Mm-hmm. So if I don't know how to handle conflict in a healthy manner, then I can be difficult. Maybe I'm an avoider. Maybe I'm a pleaser, right?
Makes sense.
And so, however, when we start talking about people that are really, really difficult or at that spectrum of being toxic or narcissistic, then you really are dealing with someone that they won't change the behavior.
Okay.
And so that's why, because I'm the founder of Healing Life Institute, where we help people, just really be self-champions and live their best life. And so I'm all for, relationships. We're created to love and to be loved and to be in a relationship and do life with people. So it's a need, just like, I need water every day to live physically, well, emotionally, we are created to be in a relationship and community. Mm-hmm. So how do I do that when I can be difficult myself, right?
Yes.
That's a hard pill to swallow. I'm 50, so I can be like, I can be difficult.
I definitely know I can be difficult. But do you think there's a difference between someone who's difficult sometimes and understands, okay, I'm difficult in that moment, and someone who's difficult, like that's just their personality? Absolutely. Any situation they're in, they make it difficult.
Absolutely. So I love that you said that. Yeah. And that's really what I wanted to highlight today is what if I do have someone in my life that is on the spectrum of difficulty where they aren't taking accountability. They aren't saying, oh, wow, I could be difficult. However, I'm going to change. And so if you're with someone that won't take accountability, then that gets into the other thing that we were going to talk about is, okay, well, then what do I do? And that's self-care. Mm-hmm. And you have to really step into awareness of, okay, I need to set really healthy boundaries to start to take care of myself.
Yeah.
And make decisions that best serve me. And so, does that make sense?
It does. And so I knew coming in that we were going to talk about difficult people, but I went ahead and, because we throw around that word toxic all the time. I know I do, like that person's toxic for me. So what does that really mean? So I looked up this definition and tell me, what you think. But on Google, I found this. It says a toxic person is anyone whose behavior adds negativity and upset to your life. Many times people who are toxic are dealing with their own stresses and traumas. You always have to defend yourself to this person. You never feel fully comfortable around them, and you continually feel bad about yourself in their presence. So it's someone who makes you feel these things. Is that
Yeah, I love that. And so I'm going to simplify it.
Okay. Please do.
Because we're basically dealing with, emotional abuse. So someone that is a manipulator versus someone that, just can, maybe make a mistake, or because we all are going to make mistakes. I think that's the one difference that I want people to understand is if I can take accountability for my mistakes and change my behavior, then I'm not toxic.
Yeah, you can acknowledge.
Then I'm not narcissistic.
Yeah, you can apologize and move forward.
Correct.
Yeah.
And in therapy, we call that a safe person.
Okay.
So that's someone that, I can trust, that I believe that they have my best interest at heart. And I then have their best interest at heart, and we do life together versus an unsafe person. So that would be the toxic person, the highly difficult person, the narcissistic person that you really can't be in a real caring relationship with because it's one-sided.
Yeah.
And so an unsafe person, they will never own or address their own shortcomings.
Okay.
Or maybe they will, but then they don't. And so you're in this constant.
And I think that it's funny that you say that because I know toxic people, but there's one particular in my life that for me is toxic. And that's what happens. Like, I think they do it to just make it go away. Like, I'm going to acknowledge it, but they don't really mean it because then the next 2 seconds later, like you're doing the same thing.
Right.
So.
Because, and yes, and you're exactly right. Yeah. And so that's really my hope. And this is one of the things that I'm so excited about where we are in, psychology today is we are actually being able to give people the tools to be able to spot high conflict narcissistic people, and you spot their behavior and you name it.
Okay.
And so we're no longer kind of orbiting around the person and the situation and questioning myself and doing all of that. We're actually sitting here and saying, no, when someone, blames you, does not take accountability, is not reliable and dependable, and you're questioning yourself.
And I read this one. They make you feel guilty. They control you by guilt tripping. And they play the victim.
Correct. And and we also, have you ever heard of living in a fog? So if you're with someone that is highly, highly manipulative, like I said, it's a spectrum disorder, just like I can have, something that's maybe says that it's precancerous, or maybe it's stage 1, 2, 3, or 4 cancer. People can have, narcissistic qualities, or they can be highly narcissistic and suffer from NPD. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And that's why I keep highlighting on behavior. And so in psychology that we're finally where we can actually name something. And so I always liken it, if you're dealing with someone in your life, and it might be a family member, and that's the hardest.
Yes.
Because if you grew up in a family of origin where, a mother or father was conflict adverse or high conflict, so it was good or bad, it was all or nothing thinking, it was shaming and blaming, and you felt like you were walking on eggshells. However, and they were judging others. So you live in the state of denial because you think that's normal. And then you step out of that situation and you're like, wait a minute, people see life differently. It's not this, all or nothing and guilt.
Yes.
And
well, that happened to me personally because when I met my husband, he doesn't come from that kind of family.
Right.
They communicate very well.
Yeah.
They communicate to each other. So if they have an issue, it's not going behind someone's back to another family member. So my eyes were opened and I was just like, oh, wow, like this is healthy. This is what it should be like. And it took me many, many years to learn how to communicate, to learn how to deal with conflict because I didn't know how. I wanted to fight. I always wanted to fight. And he's just like, yeah, that's not happening, because he's very secure in who he is. He didn't come from that background. And so I had to change how I communicate and how I dealt with conflict.
So do you feel like you were fighting because you felt like your voice was not heard?
Yes,
and your
100%.
family was,
Yes, 100%.
So this is where I get excited, because a lot of people is the fact that you recognize it's learned behavior.
Mm-hmm. And just being defensive, like always like ready for a fight. Like I have to defend myself.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So I always say with highly toxic people, we use this acronym JADE. It's JADE. If you have to justify yourself, argue, defend, or constantly explain yourself.
I like that, Jade.
Yeah, okay. Jade. Yeah, I know. It's justify, argue, defend, and explain yourself. Then you're in a toxic situation.
Okay.
And so what can you do? And so there's two things you can do. So one, you recognize, wait, I'm not handling this in a healthy way. Lynette, I'm going to change my behavior. So I did the same. So you were a fighter.
Yes.
And I was a pleaser.
Okay.
And so they sometimes say parent pleasers become people pleasers. Mm-hmm. And so I have a really, really hard time with setting personal limits.
Okay.
And I feel really guilty if I say no. And I tend to have this idealistic view, like, oh, and then it's like, wait,
yeah.
I can't do all of this. Mm-hmm. And then to have to say no, it's like I feel disappointed.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm not pleasing the people. But what I discovered by living that way is that wasn't healthy. Mm-hmm. And so I had to learn how to be able to say yes and no, and then allow people to also be able to help me.
Yeah.
And so I we talked about this the last time, was, being that rescuer, that pleaser, and learning how to serve yourself and learning how to be that self-champion, kind of, Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
Chick-fil-A, they have boundaries. Like, I love Chick-fil-A because they know who they are. Mm-hmm. They know what they can do. They know what they can't. They're the same where you can go to the Chick-fil-A in Chattanooga or Buckhead.
So
you know what you're getting, because there's that clear, defined, who are you? Mm-hmm. And so that's really one of the ways, if you are, listening to this and you're like, oh, well, gosh, maybe I am a fighter, or maybe I don't know how to handle conflict, or maybe I am an avoider. You can learn how to do it differently.
Yeah.
And that's what I get so excited about. Mm-hmm. And when I see relationships, couples will come to me and they're struggling in their marriage. And the tools that I give them is to identify, okay, this is what we're individually doing that's unhealthy, typically from family of origin. And then they learn how to do it differently. And they learn to turn towards each other in conflict and, stand in the mess.
Yeah.
And it saves relationships.
It's like, once I figured out how to do that, because I would fight, but then I didn't express myself because I didn't feel, a lot of the times growing up, it didn't matter what I said. I was always going to be wrong because the adults in the room were always going to win no matter what.
Right.
And so when I got married, so I was either the fighter or I'm not going to express myself because it doesn't matter anyways, because I'll be wrong and you're right. And so I played the little victim, like, you're right, I'm wrong, I'm the worst, I don't know how to communicate, throwing it back in his face like a little kid. And granted, I was 25 when I got married, so I was a little kid. But once I learned that he's a safe person.
Correct.
We can argue, and like you said, you sit in it, but it's not, I don't feel like it's the end of the world. I don't think, he hates me. We just are having this conflict. Let's talk about it and let's move on. And it's been life-changing for me.
Correct. So let's highlight that, that you just said, because I love that, because that's where I said most people come to me and they're like, am I with a narcissist? Is this relationship, can I save it? Mm-hmm. And so to answer that is you have to become self-aware with yourself. And you need to say, how do I handle conflict? and then start handling conflict, by owning your shortcomings.
Okay.
And then see if that person will do the same.
Yes.
It's that simple.
Mm-hmm.
And if the person's not willing to, then you've got
we have a bigger problem.
Then we dive into yes. Well, then we have to yes, we do. And so what ends up happening there is you have to make a really hard decision, because if you stay in the relationship, you're what I call an emotional enabler. So you're enabling this person to continue to cause conflict and manipulation in your life. Mm-hmm. And we teach people how to treat us.
Yeah.
And so, so that's one of the things.
So this is if the other person, so you're self-aware and you're ready to make some changes, and the other person's they feel like they're fine. There's nothing to change. This is who I am. Take me or leave me type thing.
Okay. Yes. And the number one thing you can do to figure that out. So these are tools. So I have over 30 years of both personal and professional experience in dealing with really, really, really high conflict situations. Okay. I've actually was in the court system for about 10 years, had a judge removed.
Wow.
Right. So the tools that I give my clients really do work. So there was some corruption going on, and I was able to highlight that through the tools that I use in my own practice.
Wow, that's a big deal.
It was humbling. Yeah. It was not, 20 years, it was not something that I sought out. Mm-hmm. However, it was something that was presented in front of me. And so I just spoke truth. Mm-hmm. And then things started unfolding. And so the tools really do work, because it's counterintuitive to think, okay, so when this person's lying, I'm going to stay in the space and still speak my truth, even though they're lying. Mm-hmm. And that's how you highlight the behavior when someone is highly, manipulative and deceitful to the far, far end. Mm-hmm. And so the number one thing you can start to say, so we're talking about perspective.
Yeah.
Because someone that's manipulative is constantly making you question your point of view.
Yes.
Question who you are. Yes. I always say there are two ways to be emotionally abused. Do you know what they are?
I don't. Or have we talked about this and I just don't remember?
Yes.
That would be really bad.
Yeah. Well, okay. So the two ways to be emotionally abused is, number one, you have to be either emotionally or financially invested with this person. And what I mean...
We did talk about that. I should have remembered.
No, it's okay. Well, because you can get with a manipulator that, with a business deal. Mm-hmm. And so maybe you're not emotionally invested with this person, especially in our world today.
Yeah.
And you have a signed contract, and then all of a sudden you discover I've wired the money and this person was in California and they're gone.
Yeah.
So what do? Okay, well, you've been abused. Because sure, you can try to go through the court system and all that, or small claims court. However, you've been abused. You've been manipulated. You've been taken.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one way.
And you feel violated with that because you trusted someone, and then you feel probably dumb that I can't believe I allowed this person to do that. Mm-hmm.
Exactly, and you question yourself, and then people will say, well, you should have known better, and the reality is, in our world today, it's just a part of the world that we live in.
Yeah.
So that's just, that's how you can be financially abused. Okay. And so the emotional abuse with this is you do life with this person. So you really care about, you believe that they want the best for you. Mm-hmm. You believe that they do things out of the joy of their heart, not out of obligation and control. They make you feel obligated, and they're doing it to control you. So sure, I'll pay for college. However, I expect this out of you. And it's just, there's just strings attached.
Yeah.
So if you're doing life with someone that's manipulative, and so that's and you care about this person, you believe you should be able to trust them, because like I said, maybe they're, in your family, or maybe they're a romantic partner. And so that's one way that you can be emotionally or financially abused, is you do life with this person. This person is someone that you believe I can trust.
Yeah, that's tough though, because you are trusting in them because you chose them to be your partner for life.
Right. Or they're your mother and you didn't choose them.
Well, that's a different, Is it the same feeling, the disappointment factor? Like which one for you, or is it all just disappointing when someone is in your life that's toxic?
Yeah, so it's all abusive. Okay. However, when it's the parent, it's much more harmful. Okay. Because we emotionally grow, just like physically we have to grow. We all physically had to learn to roll over, crawl, walk, and run. Well, emotionally we're growing, and so we have to learn ages 18 and younger. We're emotionally learning, who am I? So if my primary caregivers, mother, father, taught me a lot of this like role confusion and manipulation, then that becomes part of my identity. And so you keep thinking, well, surely this person cares about me, and there's strings attached. Yeah. They're not reliable. They're not dependable. They shame you. They blame you. They make you second guess yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
So you didn't get that. So then if you step out into the real world, if you find someone that's loving, then you can learn it. Because we learn, these are learned behaviors. You have to learn how to love in healthy ways. It's like you have to learn how to eat healthy. These are learned behaviors. So it's much harder. And then you struggle with what's wrong with me, because basically your childhood got robbed. Yeah. And so I'm really hard on my parents. I don't care how old you are. I've got some clients and they're in their 70s, and they've come to me to try to restore their families, which I'm so grateful. And I'm like,
that's shocking.
I'm telling you.
Before we got on mic, I was like, no one that old is going to change. They're set in their ways. So it's possible?
It is possible. Okay. And that's where I said, like, I get so excited with the tools that work. I often say, our culture has created a lot of this division, a lot of this inability to handle conflict, like we should do. There's so many rules, especially in the South. Yeah. There's so many rules as to what things should be, and so, so it's like I said, it's always going back to owning that, wow, when I show up in this conflict, I am the pleaser, the rescuer, the avoider, and I didn't realize that. So I'm sorry, and I'd like to learn how to be a self-champion, and I'd like to learn how to be reliable and dependable and rebuild trust. Is that something we can do? And it changed. As a child, I don't care how old you are. You can be 40, and if your parent at 70 comes and says that, it's like you've been carrying this jacket of like weight, like guilt, and what's wrong with me, and why does my mother not love me or father? And so it's like you can take it off, and then you're like, okay,
like finally they get it, they see it. No, I mean with me, my parents were very young when I was born, 18, 19 years old. So they were kids themselves. And up until I was 11, my brother and I lived with my mother. And even though she was young, I felt loved. She didn't really have the best upbringing, but she cared for us. She protected us, and we didn't have luxuries because she couldn't afford it. Right. There were times she slept on the couch, and then she gave me and my brother the one bed. It was kind of like that kind of living. Or we would live in a house with literally 10 other people. We would get the basement, or they would get this room. So that's how I grew up. And then, when we were by ourselves, I always had to share with my brother. But I felt loved. She she instilled in us, I don't know, it's hard to describe, because even with moving a lot and not having material things, I felt somewhat secure in that. And then my turning point was 11, when we went to go live with my dad and my stepmom, and that whole that just changed a lot for me. It was toxic.
Yeah.
And people listen to me say that are involved with the family, with my family. They get pissed off that I say this, but this is my perspective, my truth. It was toxic. Conflict, they didn't know how to deal with conflict at all. And we were shut down as kids. We couldn't share our emotions. We couldn't. So it was horrible. It was horrible. And then people want to tell us, oh, well, they provided for you and you guys had nice things, 5 kids, and you guys had your own thing. And I don't give a shit about that. I'm emotionally scarred. Like, take those things and shove them somewhere, because now I have to deal with this as an adult and try to figure out why I have panic attacks, why I'm so anxious, why I have all these things. So these parents that think, oh, I'm just going to give you things and that's how I'm going to show my love, that's not the way. It's just not the way.
Well, exactly.
So this topic I'm very sensitive to, because I've had to undo so many things. And as you're an adult, it carries on into adulthood, because now we're adults, but they still see you as kids. And they're still treating you the same way. I've had to distance myself. And then my dad has passed, but even before he passed, I was having to distance myself, because I saw in my husband and his family, this is how things should be. Correct. And you guys are creating so much stuff over here that I just can't deal with you guys. Yeah.
No, and I love that you shared that, because I have the same situation. Mm-hmm. And I found myself in an unhealthy marriage. Mm-hmm. And I recognized, wow, I'm handling conflict like my parents did. Yeah. And now I'm getting divorced. And so now I have a child. Mm-hmm. So I have to learn how to change. So I had to go to my son and say, I'm sorry. I didn't go, and people were always like, well, how did you deal? Because you had a high conflict, ex. So what did you do? Did you tell him about your ex? I said, no. I told him about me. Yeah. I was like,
and kids know.
They know.
You don't have to go bash the person. Right. They see it for themselves how that parent is.
Exactly. Well, and I often simplify it like this. We all knew in school, we had that teacher. I still remember her, floor 11. I loved her. She wanted me to learn. She was my English teacher. She taught me the love for, she wanted me. It wasn't about the grade. Mm-hmm. It was about the love to learn. And I knew she cared about me as Bridgette. Mm-hmm. Versus I had the other teachers that they wanted to fail you. They didn't care. They were like, what's the time? No, I'm not going to meet with you afterwards. Mm-hmm. And so which teacher did you want to go to? Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. You wanted to go to the one that cared, that showed and really took that time to allow you to grow into the person you want to be. Yeah. And so that's where, and I know it's somewhat, I don't know what the right word is. It's like stepping into this space. And do you feel this? Or do you feel this? I do. It's like to be able to say, like, okay, I grew up in a family of origin that there was a lot of role confusion and an inability to handle conflict. And that still lingers in my family today. So
I can definitely say that. It's a true statement.
Right. So what's the solution? And how do I respect my family and still be able to state this? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's tough.
With the 10 Commandments, honor your mother. And so how can you do that? And, and so what I say is, you have to have self-awareness. We talk about it. It's called the reverse grief. Is we as adults, we have to accept the fact that we grew up with behaviors that did not serve us. Mm-hmm. And there's no shame or blame. There's no judgment. You know,
it's what it is.
It just is.
Yeah.
I do believe, 99% of people that do handle conflict in these unhealthy ways, their intentions, they don't realize what they're doing.
Oh, I believe that. Yeah.
It's a learned behavior. And our culture, like I said, our culture passed that down. And there's just a lot. So I really try to step into that person's frame of reference and say, well, what was going on in their life and why not?
Yes.
However, and I also know, like, if we think about, 30 years ago, even going to, counseling was shunned upon.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So we're blessed to have these tools and resources to be able to just look at the behavior and say, oh, it's like I'm burning the toast. I can change how I'm doing this, like how you did.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Because before my dad passed away, we had that conversation. He's like, we didn't have an Oprah or, these psychologists and to tell us how to do things differently. He's like, I wish, and so he said, so the way I showed love was by providing, because he came from a poor upbringing. So he's like, I've made it and I'm taking care of my kids. And so I understand those things 100%. Yeah. Like I understand that things weren't done maliciously. Like I'm going to mess up these children and make them feel like crap. But here we are trying to figure it out.
Right.
So,
well, and I always say it's the and, we grew up with some learned behaviors, and what do I do about it today? And so that's the exciting part that I said, like with the tools that I give my clients is, well, what you do is you go back and you reparent yourself.
Yeah.
Because you needed one healthy parent. And then when you're able to do that and you take the time to actually heal, it gives you a different frame of reference because then you don't personalize. And that's really what a healthy child learns to do. Yeah. Is you learn to step out into the world and you're not orbiting around. And when someone does something, you don't personalize it. I always say, people are like, well, Britt, what are boundaries? Because they're breaking my boundaries and I can't trust this person. And I always say, well, can you trust you? Because boundaries to me are, I know how I'm going to act before I step into a situation.
Okay. Yeah.
So if I'm sitting next to my ex or if I'm sitting next to you, I'm the same person. Yeah.
You're not going to get on that crazy train when you're around too.
No, I used to not, because I used to get triggered by that, however, I was like, wait, I'm reverting back to those unhealthy habits.
So that means there were no boundaries because you're allowing this person to control how you're going to act and feel and say, okay.
Yes, exactly. So that's right.
Yeah. Yes. Yay.
Yes. Exactly.
Okay. That makes sense.
And so it's that shift in perspective. And so that's why if we go back to what we were talking about earlier in our podcast was, what are those two ways I can be emotionally abused? Is one, I'm doing life with this person. Yeah. They're either in my finances, my bed, my family, my friend group. They're in my life. Yeah. And I believe they have my best interest and I have their best interest. I really care about this person. And then number two is you question who you are.
Yeah.
And that's where if you grew up in that family of origin, that there was that confusion, 18 and younger, you're asking yourself this question, who am I? So if you grew up with that role confusion, sometimes I'm good, it doesn't serve you well. So really the healthy way is you've got to do the inner work. I know, people say all that.
It's so true, Britt. Like you really have to do the inner work. That is what has been my saving grace. I finally got to a point where I'm like, I need to figure this out. I can't stop. I can't keep blaming what happened because it's not going to change. So why do I keep going to the past? Like I would mentally rewrite, like, this is how I wish my life would be, or this is how, it's like you're torturing yourself because it's never going to be that.
Well, it keeps you stuck. Right. It
You're
keeps
so
you stuck in
yeah.
fear. And if we talk about self-esteem, because that's, if I'm questioning who am I, right? That's self-esteem.
Yes.
So self-esteem is driven by two things. One is how I view myself, and then how the people I do life with, I feel they view me. So that's why that family of origin is so critical.
Yeah.
Or your friend group. You know, they say the three or four people you hang out with the most is who you become like. So if you're with someone that was making you question who you are, then you're going to be questioning who you are.
Yes.
For me, what I try to do is I just find balance. So I know who in my life I can trust.
Yes, that's huge.
And then... And I'm grateful for that. And so those are people that I can be me.
Yes.
Like I just am me. And I just, they don't care when,
Yeah.
And then I have people that are that I do life with. And I understand we all have different frame of reference.
Yes.
So when they say something that kind of triggers me, and I'm like kind of caught off guard, I don't have to say, well, I can't trust this person. They don't need to be in my life and they're judging, and why are they saying this? Yeah. I don't personalize it. And I'm like, well, that's their frame of reference. However, this is what I enjoy with this person. Yes. Does that make...
It makes 100% sense.
It's a healthier way to do life. Because that's how I used to do it, how you were talking earlier, where it was like all or nothing. Yeah. Now I'm trying to find that balance.
Okay, I'm so glad you say that, Britt, because I don't know if it was, I was recording last week, and I don't even know if I made it to the podcast. It might have, but we're going to go to this conversation where I was saying exactly what you said. The people that know me, and I can really let my walls down, and I am like Leonette. There's other people that I hang out with that think I'm a quote unquote a mystery because they only see some of me, but I enjoy hanging out with them, but they're not... like you said, I find something that I like about them. Right. But I don't give them my all, if that makes sense. So one of my friends was like, oh, I just don't do any of that. Like, I only surround myself with positivity or people that I can truly be myself with. And I'm like, well, then I just wouldn't have a ton of friends.
And I call that when you're saying, like, I'm just going to have positive people and this is how I'm doing life. That's really living in protection mode.
Yes.
And if we bring in the Christian part of it, I kind of liken it like this. If you look at Christ's life, like Christ knew who he was. Like he would go and spend time with God, wake up before the sun. Like he knew that was where he got that
his source.
And so then... He had the people he did life with, his posse, and he'd call his posse out, he'd be like, Peter, you're going to denounce me. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. Yeah. And he didn't personalize it. Yeah. He just was like, this is how it is. Or, when Lazarus dead and Mary's like, where are you? And he's like, what are y'all doing? Like, just breathe. So he was real with them. Yeah. Then he had the crowds that he interacted with. And he would meet someone and say, how can I help you? And if they wanted help, and he would say, do you believe? And then he would point them back to God. Yeah. And then he had the Sadducees and the Pharisees. He had then that group that was like, no, you're making me angry. Yeah. This isn't okay. You need to change your behavior. Yeah.
To hear more amazing female warrior stories, hit that subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating. We would truly appreciate the love. Now back to our show.
I think the difficult thing that comes into play, and this is a culture thing, is we think we should do certain things. And then if we're not doing those certain things, then we feel like we're judged instead of knowing this is why I'm choosing not to do this. Yes. And making sure if that person's okay with that decision or not. And like I said, if they're a highly toxic person, they're not going to be okay with it. So then you've got to know this is why I'm making that choice and not look for outside validation. Yes. That's why it makes sense.
Because we're going to come in contact with so many different people. And I love going back to what you were going to say before. I think we started talking about something else, but it starts with ourselves. It starts with our inner person, really understanding why we tick, what we like, what we don't like, so that when we do go out into the world and interact with people, we just know, we know what our spirit and our soul is going to accept, not accept, what we're going to tolerate, not tolerate. Like, there's so many different things that are going to come at us, but it starts with us. It really, 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 truly does. And because I've experienced it myself, like,
it's the most freeing thing. It's faith over fear, and it's counterintuitive and it's hard.
Yes.
So I jokingly say to my clients, I try with a capital T. That's very bold and extremely wobbly, because I try and then I fall and then I get back up. So it's a moment to moment decision that you're like, I'm walking with God. I'm letting go of control. I have my boundaries, and I can navigate, when the waters get rough and the choices that I have to make. And that's, with even like with Mother's Day coming up, if you have a difficult mother that possibly is a narcissist, you're not going to get that label. People don't go and get the diagnosis. That's the hard thing. If you're dealing with someone that is, has NPD or is highly manipulative and toxic and is intentionally causing conflict. So what do you do?
Yeah.
Do you know what you do?
I don't.
Well, number one.
Because, to be honest, I have my mom and then my stepmom, and she's the one that I have a hard time dealing with. And so since she's my quote unquote stepmom, I've just learned to I've just told myself I'm not dealing with it. Like, I keep her over there. So I don't know if she was my mom, I don't know how I would handle it.
Right. The advice that I try to give and I try to follow myself is relationships are one-on-one. And so if you are with someone that is manipulative and controlling, or if you're questioning, then you need to take some time to give yourself permission to step away and really get clear, and then make moment-to-moment decisions to say, okay, it's Mother's Day coming up. What is, God, or what am I feeling inclined to do today, versus just having to draw that line in the sand and allow it to unfold.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Because
we're evolving. And so maybe and that doesn't mean that you trust a person. It does not mean you have to have real, I liken someone that's, narcissistic. It's like if you're dealing with someone that's an alcoholic. If I know someone in my life, I have someone in my life that is an alcoholic. And so I understand, if I'm with them, they might get very drunk, or they might want to get behind the wheel of the car and take the key. So I already have that understanding that when I step into that relationship, that there's an issue with alcohol. Okay. So you have to already identify, this person in my life has an issue with conflict, has an issue with taking accountability, has an issue with being reliable and dependable, has an issue with shaming and blaming people, has an issue. And so if I know that, it's a game changer.
What if I get all those things. What if you understand and you know it, but you still don't want to be a part of it? Is that wrong? I just don't want to be a part of it. I really, in my heart, do not.
So here's the theory.
Regardless of that, I understand. I get it. I understand. And I still just...
So I'm going to say this to you, and then repeat it back to me. So you asked, is it wrong? So what if I said, it's neither right nor wrong, it just is?
I like that answer.
And it just is.
Yeah.
And is it unnecessary? Is it sad? Is it unfortunate? Yes. And then for you today, is it wisdom to be able to say, this is my eject button.
Yeah.
I'm not going to continue to step into this space until you can take accountability. And this saddens me. And it's a choice that I'm making. And my hope is maybe there's restoration at some point. However, today, this is what it is.
Yeah. Like, I can be around her, but the one-on-one thing, I'm just not up for that. But I've been around her in group settings, and it's fine. I don't feel mad or sad or, I just feel like, okay, she's a part of this because we still share the same people. And I mean, she's going to be a part of my life for forever, actually.
Well, and so, and I could give you some tools to help you with that, or also just give you permission. Like, that's where I was saying, you've got to listen to your own voice and where you are. If you're strong enough, if your life is balanced enough now.
It's very balanced right now.
Right. So then being aware that if I step in that space, I'm inviting some conflict.
Yes.
You just have to name it. You just have to say, okay, I'm intentionally, it's like, it's like if you go to the football, this is going to be a bad analogy, but if you go to the football game and it's cold outside and you're like, I'm not going to enjoy this as much as if it was a pretty, and it's raining and I'm watching the football, but I'm going because it's a choice I'm making.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to understand, okay, if I chose to go and have a one-on-one conversation, that's going to be uncomfortable. There's going to be shame and blame. There's going to be this confusion. And why would I be choosing to make that decision?
Yeah.
When I step into spaces with people that I already know, because history has proven to me that there's a repeated behavior that is manipulative and lying and deceitful and confusing, then I step into that situation knowing it's not if this person's going to shame or blame me, it's when. So I already know my exit strategy, which is I give myself permission to thoughtfully and peacefully step away. And I also know how to respond, where I will always say, well, that's an interesting perspective. Okay. Would you like to know my perspective? And if you start to use that with toxic people, do you know what they will say?
They don't want to hear your perspective.
And then
no, I do not want to hear what you have to say.
And then you're like, okay, good. Now I gotta go.
Yeah.
That was so much easier.
Yeah, than me wasting my breath.
And I'm telling you, it's so empowering when you start to do that.
Well, this is going to help a lot of people. I know I'm using my life as an example, and like I keep saying, it's my perspective, it's my truth. The other side, there's always another side, and there's always someone else's story. So I'm not saying that my story is the story, because I know there's another side. But I do like to give me as an example, because I know there's a lot of people that are dealing with that with parents.
Absolutely.
As well as spouses, but I don't have that example to give with it.
Right. Well, and there are two sides to the story. However, there's also manipulators and liars, and there aren't two sides to the story with that.
Yes.
And that's so key. So if you are clear that this person is a manipulator and a liar, why I was saying you don't have to say, I can't go in that space. What you have to do is get the tools to be able to handle that. And it's not two sides. It's you, it's this is what it is. And would you like to know my perspective? And this is how I feel, and this is why, and here's my evidence. And see if that person can validate that. And I'll give just an easy example, okay, is Charlie Brown and Lucy. Yeah. Okay, there's that reoccurring scene where Lucy, so you tell me, do you think there's two sides to the story?
Is it the football one?
Yeah, so Lucy.
No, she's a jerk.
Yeah, she's a manipulator and a liar, right? Yeah. So she will always hold the football and say, Charlie Brown. And he will even say, I don't hate the fact that you're asking me to kick this. I hate your opinion of me.
Mm-hmm.
So he's trying to prove himself to her.
Yeah.
And he goes and runs and kicks the football, and she like pulls it up. And then he's like, what the heck? Mm-hmm. So what he could have done is he could say, you know what? Well, videotape it. Right? So he has evidence.
Yeah.
And then he could say, Lucy, this has happened 50 times. Mm-hmm. You put the football and I go to kick it and you pull it.
Yeah.
This isn't okay. Mm-hmm. Period. And can you take accountability for that? And what will you do in the future so we can rebuild trust? And if that person can't sit and have that hard conversation, then you know that you're with someone that doesn't want to change. Mm-hmm. And so then it's just wasted energy.
Yeah.
Does that make...
Oh, 100%.
I know.
Because a lot of times you're inviting that person to defend themselves. That's what'll happen. They'll bring up all the things and it's like, that's not what I just said.
So I
did not just say that.
So
and so they start justifying everything.
Yes. So you're going to love this. So high conflict is, because that's what we're doing. That's what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Is they tend to, when you're dealing with someone that's high conflict, it's the conflict is not what's creating the issue. Mm-hmm. The person is what's creating the issue.
Yes, yeah.
So I give this analogy, and that's what gaslighting is. That's why I was saying it's not two sides.
Okay.
So they make you question, and so I give this analogy sometimes. Sometimes my analogies are good, sometimes they aren't. That's okay. Okay, so this is what a manipulator would do. Is I'll invite the person over and say, hey, I'm going to make dinner for you. I'm so excited. And they're going to be like, well, you don't have to make dinner for me. Or maybe they're appreciative. Okay, that sounds great. So they come and they're sitting there and they're having a glass of wine and I'm cooking and we're talking. And then all of a sudden I knock over the oil onto the stove and the kitchen fire starts, mm-hmm. a small one. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh my gosh, can you grab the fire extinguisher? Because mm-hmm. we've got to put the fire out. And the person that's a manipulator will go, typical you. Can't even cook a meal.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, the fire's getting bigger. Uh-huh. Can you get me the fire extinguisher? And they're like, you're always needing help.
Uh-huh. I'm always here for you.
Yeah, as the fire is getting bigger. And I'm like, do you see the fire? And they're like, oh my gosh, this is exhausting. Mm-hmm. And so then you're like, can you move out of the way? And by the time you get to the fire extinguisher to fix the problem, mm-hmm. the issue, mm-hmm. the house is burned down.
Yeah.
Then everyone comes and I didn't even want her to cook me dinner. Uh-huh. It was her fault. Yeah. The house. And then you're sitting there like, oh my gosh, what?
Yeah, what just happened?
Uh-huh. And so
that's a great analogy because I envision that very well in my mind. That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Because it becomes your fault and you're like, no, I was trying to put the fire out.
Correct.
You didn't help. And now it's all my fault because the house burned down.
Well, and why? So what? Okay. So this is where I tell you that the tools work. Mm-hmm. So if I already know that, okay. So lovingly, let's say you're the person I've invited.
Yes.
Let's say you're the person that I've invited to dinner.
Okay.
So you're the narcissist.
The narcissist. I can do that.
Right? And I say to you, so we're going to use emotional sensitive stuff, is, Lynette, I'm so happy that you're here. And I just kind of really, need to tell you something is, I'm really struggling financially and I don't know what to do with my finances. Is there any way you could loan me some money? What would you say to that?
As a narcissist? Oh gosh, I can't get into a narcissist's mind, but would they give it to you, but they would hold it over your head maybe?
Right.
Yeah.
So my mistake would be me even asking you that.
Yeah, because you would owe them big time if they.
Correct. Okay. Or me sharing something that would be sensitive to me.
I get it. Because they're going to use that against you.
Correct.
Yeah.
So what would my game plan be is I'm choosing Bridgette. I'm choosing to have Lynette to my home. I understand that she's manipulative. I understand I'm not to trust her with things that are important to me. I also understand, so this can help you if you're having to go with family. I know what you love to talk about. So we're going to talk about your podcast. We're going to talk about things that are important to you.
Just keep it very basic.
And you have to figure out, because they always have something. Maybe they love the galas, or they love cars, or they love to talk about their grandchildren, whatever that is. And I understand you're not going to ask me about my child. Or if you are, I'm not going to say.
Give too much information.
Life is good.
Wonderful.
It's good. Life is good.
Yeah.
And then if you say something to me that's hurtful, that's like, oh, well, I heard, that your son, this happened to them, you're going to say, well, yeah, however, we're working through things. Well, how are you working through things? Oh, well, we just are. Things are good.
Yeah. You don't have to get into it. You don't have to answer.
Remember the jade. I never justify, argue, defend, or over-explain myself. And people will say, well, Bridgette, that seems so disingenuous. That seems so unauthentic.
What I would say too. That's exactly what I think.
And I'm like, that's one perspective. Or is it wisdom? Because I'm treating you with compassion and kindness, because I am genuinely inviting you. I'm not doing it out of obligation. I'm like, okay, this is someone that I genuinely like. However, or not like, but I'm doing life with. So we have a connection of some sort. Maybe you're an aunt. I don't know. However,
it could be so many things: aunts, sisters, brothers,
right? And so
grandparents,
right?
Yeah.
And so, or maybe it's even. My husband's sister-in-law.
But you're going to see them at certain events.
Right. And so it's just more wisdom, because it's not judging. It's just recognizing the behavior is their behavior is they like to shame and blame and cause conflict. And they like, and so I'll like be like, oh, now they're being the persecutor, or now they're being the, and it's not judging. It's just more wisdom.
Yeah.
And I like to think everyone we meet's a teacher. And so it's how to be emotionally well.
Yeah.
So that's really the main thing you can do. If you're dealing with, a difficult person and you're not sure what to do, is you need to become emotionally well. So then you can identify, where is this person on the spectrum, and can they change? Can I get the tools? And then can they get the tools? And can we work together?
Yeah. I like that. So that's where you come in.
That's where I come in. Yes.
So tell us about your new women's group that you are doing.
Oh, I know. I'm so excited. Because therapy can be expensive. And when you have grown up in that family of origin, or if you are in a difficult relationship right now, this has to be weekly. This can't just be like, oh, I went once and everything's okay. It's not like, however, once you get the tools, I liken it to, brushing your teeth every day. So you have to keep its perspective and your thoughts and managing and coping mechanisms and self-care and all of those. It's actually fun. So the support group that I've got is, we're going to be doing it virtual and in person at our Suburban Medical Center in Peachtree Corners. And right now we're doing just women only. And it's going to be a small group, and then we're going to meet. It's a 4-month commitment, and we're starting it in a couple of weeks. We've got a few more spots left. And so basically, we're going to get together for an hour once a week and just learn how to be emotionally well and learn how to deal with difficult people with compassion and logic. It's not, I've got to cut this person out of my life, I have to end this. I'm going to really get the tools to be able to make decisions that not only best serve me, but best serve my family. And so that's what we're doing.
I love that, because you are... It's coming, once you learn those tools, it's like you're coming from a place of strength and
it's freedom, and it's, and they're the tools that if I had these tools 20 years ago, like I said to you,
life would be different.
We didn't have these tools, and they're fun, and I think I make it fun, because I'm goofy, and so we have some goofy things, and it's retraining your brain, and we do high fours and self champs and all that stuff. But so it's a group of people that especially if you are coming to the awareness that your family of origin or the person that you're involved with right now is emotionally abusive, like. It's just, you coming at it from a place of wisdom and that place of strength. And so then if you are, just coming to this awareness, it's going to be that safe place. Because I think we were talking earlier, I call it's a reverse grief that you have to go through. So when you lose someone that you love, you go through, the 5 stages of grief, which are... it's no order, but denial, bargaining, anger, and sadness. And you circle through those feelings until you get to an acceptance that this person's no longer with me. Well, that's how you heal from a relationship that this person's not going to change. Okay. Is you have to put acceptance first. I have to accept that the change must come from me. I'm the person that's going to change this relationship. I have to stop looking to this person to change. So I'm going to change. However, through that is you go through that denial, bargain, anger, and sadness, because it's great. It's sad because you're like, this person, this is so unnecessary. That's the word
that's a good word. Unnecessary. Yeah.
Well, it's unnecessary because it's like, guys, we all have issues. Would you like to see my list? Yeah. And that's my hope. I'm an idealist. My hope is that people start to get these tools. And like I said, I started this off by, saying to you, it makes me excited when I see couples that work through this. Yeah. And actually start to apply these tools. And I've got lots right now, and I see them, and they're doing it. And then they're teaching their kids. Yes. It's conflict resolution. That is so exciting. That's all it is. However, there are those situations where you do have to walk away. Yeah. And that's, and like I said, it just is. Yeah. It's not good or bad. It just is.
I like that. Because a lot of times you feel so guilty over your decisions and your thoughts and am I doing the right thing? But yeah, I think that's perfect to say this is what it is.
Right.
And
if you've done the work to figure out what it is, yes. That's just so key. And I always, if you don't know, if you're researching, that's all you need to know. That means go to a trained person to find out. Stop researching on the internet. Stop reading. I always say the number one thing to stop doing if you're questioning and if you're in a relationship with the difficult person or toxic person, do you know what the number one thing you need to stop doing?
I don't. What is it?
Telling your story to everyone.
What does that mean?
You have to stop saying, this person did this person did this. Should I do this? Should I do that? You have to
try to get advice and input. Okay.
So what you have to do is find a trained person that understands emotional wellness and get clarity for yourself. Because a lot of people don't understand this emotional abuse. It's so subtle. And so going around and asking people, it just keeps you in confusion. And it just does not serve you well. And so I'm like, it's like if I think I'm pregnant, I'm not going to keep asking my friends, like,
do you think I'm pregnant?
Do you think I'm pregnant? I didn't have a period. And it's like, go get a pregnancy kit. It's pretty. Go to the doctor. Yeah. It's not that hard.
That is a good point.
However, we don't want to step into that space because sometimes we like staying in the unknown.
Yes, that's so true. And then sometimes, unless you've been in that situation or you're experiencing it yourself, asking friends is so pointless because how do they know?
Correct.
Unless they've experienced it, or even still, everyone's situation is so different.
Right, and and friends are not supposed to be our therapists. It doesn't mean, you
Can
really
you say that out loud to everyone in the back of the room?
Well, and I've had I've had to learn this myself. For our friends are not our therapists. Yeah. our friends are to do life with us and we should have strength. Does that mean that we can't ask for some guidance or advice? Sure. However, it's not where, if you're dealing with something that's just really difficult, then find a therapist that you can talk to and that will help you get clarity.
Yeah.
And that's, like I said, what I'm excited about this support group is that's going to be people that are going through the same situation and validation, because you have to get validated. And so you need to understand, like, oh, okay, so this is to be expected. This feeling is to be expected, yes.
And then I'm not alone in this journey. Yeah, there's other people going through it.
Right. Well, and you and I bonding. So it's like nice. It's like you're saying, okay, I grew up with, unhealthy behavior patterns of not knowing how to resolve conflict. Yeah. And I'm like, I did too. Yeah. And then we're like, yay. Yeah. Okay.
So it's basically what we're doing now, but with more women, and you're guiding us and telling us, how we can get out of this. I love that. So they can go to healinglifeinstitute.org.
healinglifeinstitute.org
to sign up.
And I've got my Bridgette Morris Instagram official that you can also go to.
Bridgette Morris official.
Yeah. Okay. And then you fill out an application because I do want to I'm screening the. I just want to make sure that the groups. It's important to me that the groups are cohesive and that it's a safe place for everyone. So it's a simple application, and like I said, we've got a few spots, and then we've got a Leah,
we have a code. It's Virago10 to get 10% off.
Yeah.
Of the course or of the group. It's not really a course.
It's a group. Yeah. Yes.
So thank you so much. As always, I love talking to you. I feel every time like I've done therapy, so this is always fun. So thank you, and I cannot wait until next time.
I know. Thanks so much.
All right, Britt. We'll see ya.
Bye-bye.
The quote of the week was shared by Heather Parton on my Facebook page, and it says, "To change your life, you must change the way you think." Thank you so much for listening to Virago 24/7. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and please give us 5-star ratings. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Virago24_7 and on Facebook at Virago24/7, and just connect with us and share your story. We'd love to hear from you.